Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're embarking on what I think is a fascinating exploration into a topic that feels more vital than ever.
Hmm.
It's how to cultivate a resilient, positive mindset, and then translate that energy into meaningful, tangible progress.
Right.
This isn't about ignoring problems or just like thinking positive in a superficial way.
No, definitely not.
It's about understanding a powerful, evidence-based approach to facing challenges and creating real, lasting change in your life and, in the world around you.
Exactly. And we often hear about optimism as this sort of vague, feel-good state, maybe something for the idealists among
Yeah,
us.
kind of airy-fairy sometimes.
But our sources today reveal it as a truly actionable and, well, foundational element, not just for personal resilience, but for remarkably effective leadership, too.
Okay.
So we're going to really unpack how optimism isn't merely a belief, but a powerful catalyst for practical steps forward. And that's particularly crucial in a world that often presents us with, frankly, overwhelming challenges and uncertainties.
And to guide us on this journey, we've built together an incredible stack of sources. Really interesting stuff.
Yeah, quite a range.
We've got Forbes articles on unlocking optimism and navigating global grievances, alongside scholarly insights on the direct connection between action and optimism.
Hmm.
We're even going to take a strategic look at the philosophy of positivism, which sounds heavy but connects directly, and then tie all these threads to the crucial concept of authentic leadership.
Yeah, and our mission today is really to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight from all this material. We want to help you understand precisely how these maybe seemingly disparate ideas fit together.
Right.
More importantly, we want to show what they mean for you. Whether you're looking to boost your own focus and energy, maybe inspire your team to achieve new heights, or simply make better sense of how positive change actually happens in, a complex world.
Okay, so let's unpack this together.
Let's do it.
So let's dive right in with the core idea of optimism itself. Our Forbes source, the one titled 5 Ways to Unlock Optimism When Struggling to Stay Focused, frames it not as like a naive or Pollyanna-ish belief,
Right.
but as a powerful antidote to feeling completely overwhelmed and unfocused, which happens a lot.
It does.
So when we talk about optimism here, we mean the deeply held belief that things can improve and that progress is always possible, even when, distractions are constant and setbacks feel like they're just draining all your motivation.
And what's truly fascinating here is how the article, and actually Dr. Martin Seligman's whole concept of learned optimism, really elevates optimism beyond just simple positivity.
Okay.
It presents it as a strategic mindset, something you can actively cultivate.
Right, not something you're just born with.
Exactly. Seligman's groundbreaking research highlights that our level of optimism isn't fixed. It can be developed by consciously altering our explanatory style.
Explanatory style. What exactly is that?
It's essentially the way we interpret and explain the events that happen in our lives, particularly when things go wrong. It's our default narrative, if you like.
That distinction feels incredibly important. So it's not about ignoring problems,
Not at all.
but about how you interpret them when they arise. Can you break down those explanatory styles for us?
Absolutely. Let's consider two distinct ways people tend to explain setbacks. An optimistic explanatory style involves attributing difficulties to external factors.
Okay, like circumstances.
Yeah. For instance, if you don't succeed at a task, an optimist might think the conditions were particularly tough today, or that was a tricky problem, but I'll get it next time. They view these setbacks as temporary, believing things can improve with effort or, better conditions in the future.
Right, no, forever.
And specific. Understanding that one challenge or failure doesn't define their overall ability or generalize to all aspects of their life. It's contained.
And I imagine the pessimistic style is quite different.
It is, yeah. A pessimistic explanatory style, on the other hand, attributes failures to internal factors, like a perceived lack of ability or maybe personal worth.
So it's my fault, I'm just not good enough.
Exactly that kind of thinking. They see these setbacks as permanent, believing that failure is a constant and unchangeable feature of their life. And critically, they view them as global, generalizing one failure to all areas of their existence. So if they mess up one presentation, they might conclude, I'm bad at everything.
Wow, that's a heavy burden.
It really is. And this distinction, how we explain events to ourselves, is absolutely crucial because it significantly impacts our mental health, our resilience, our motivation to keep trying, and just our overall well-being.
Makes sense.
Seligman even developed tools like the attributional style questionnaire, the ACE-Q, to assess these patterns. It shows just how measurable and impactful this concept really is.
That makes perfect sense. It's a powerful mental framework. And the truly good news, as you said, is that learned optimism is something you can actively develop.
Yes, definitely.
Our sources aren't just presenting a theory. They're providing concrete, actionable strategies that emphasize this is an active process, not a passive one. So, where do we start? What's the first step?
A great first step, and one that's often underestimated, I think, is to practice gratitude to reset your mindset.
Gratitude. Okay.
The why it works here is profoundly simple, yet really powerful. Gratitude shifts your perspective. When you actively seek out things to be thankful for, you naturally reduce stress and begin to see the bigger picture beyond your immediate frustrations or worries.
Right.
Optimism just thrives in an environment of gratitude.
Right.
It creates a kind of positive foundation.
That's interesting. It's not about ignoring challenges, but about building a foundation of appreciation. So how do you actually do this, like practically?
Well, a practical tip is to start each day, or maybe just pause during a busy one, to jot down, say, 3 things you're genuinely grateful for.
Just 3 things.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Yeah.
But the key is to focus on how they contribute to your ability to succeed or find clarity.
Yeah, give me an example.
Sure. So if you're having a particularly taxing workday, you might pause and make a note of gratitude for, I don't know, the opportunity to work on meaningful projects, or maybe for the support of a great team member who just helps you out.
Ah, okay.
It's about consciously building that mental muscle of appreciation, making it a habit.
I can see how that would shift your energy. It interrupts the negativity loop. Okay, building on that, what's the next strategy?
Next, use visualization to regain clarity.
Visualization. Okay.
When your focus wavers, it's often because your mind is caught up in the stress of the moment, or maybe you've lost sight of your larger objective, your why.
Right, you get lost in the weeds.
Exactly. Visualization helps you shift your mindset and channel optimism by reconnecting you with your underlying purpose. Research by scholars like Michael Shire and Charles Carver found that optimism fuels persistence, precisely because optimistic individuals vividly envision reaching their goals, even when they're facing setbacks.
So they can see the finish line.
Yeah, they can see it, feel it almost, and that vision pulls them forward.
So it's about creating a mental blueprint for success. How can our listeners practically apply this? I mean, visualization can sound a bit abstract.
It can, but it's actually very concrete. A simple, actionable tip is to take just 5 minutes daily, close your eyes, and vividly picture yourself succeeding at a key task or a major goal.
Really picture it.
Yeah, don't just think about it. Really notice how it feels when you achieve it. Use that emotional fuel to refocus your energy.
Okay.
For example, picturing a positive outcome for, say, a career-changing presentation can significantly calm nerves, boost confidence, and refocus your mental energy toward actually achieving that success. It's like a mental rehearsal that primes you for positive action.
That sounds incredibly powerful for managing stress and staying on track. I like that. What's the third strategy?
Thirdly, and this is a big one, reframe negative thoughts into opportunities.
Okay, easier said than done sometimes.
Definitely. It's incredibly easy to spiral into negativity when you're feeling unfocused or frustrated. But the optimistic mindset teaches us that setbacks aren't necessarily failures. They're often disguised opportunities to adjust, learn, and improve.
Like a course correction.
Exactly. Psychologist Richard Wiseman's decade-long study on the nature of luck, for example, emphasizes this. He found that people who consider themselves lucky often unconsciously reframe obstacles as challenges.
Interesting.
Which then helps them notice new opportunities that others might miss. So this active reframing fosters both creativity and resilience.
So it's about actively challenging that initial negative reaction. How do you coach yourself to do that in the moment?
Well, when you're faced with a discouraging thought, maybe you didn't get that promotion or a project went sideways, try writing it down. Just get it out of your head.
Okay.
Then consciously reframe it into a constructive question. Instead of, I can't believe I messed that up, ask, okay, what can I learn from this experience? What's another way to approach this goal or a similar situation next time?
Shifting from blame to learning.
Precisely. It's a conscious, deliberate effort to shift your inner dialogue from stagnation to progress.
I can see how that would make a huge difference in how you bounce back. Okay, what's next on the list? Strategy number 4.
This leads perfectly into the fourth strategy. Break goals into manageable steps.
Ah, the classic.
It is classic, but so effective. When your to-do list feels endless or a big project seems insurmountable, it's incredibly easy to lose focus and drift into frustration or, paralysis.
Definitely been there.
Yeah, me too. Optimistic thinking can dramatically shift your perspective here by reframing that overwhelming big picture into smaller, actionable tasks. Optimists don't dwell on the sheer amount of work. They focus intently on the very next best step they can take.
That's a classic strategy, but it's so often overlooked. Why does it work so well for building optimism specifically?
Well, the why it works here is simple yet profound. Completing small tasks provides an immediate, tangible sense of accomplishment. That quick win.
Feels good.
It feels good. It gives you a boost of positive emotion and motivates you to take the next small step. It creates this positive feedback loop.
Right.
So a highly strategic tip is to take a large goal and break it down into just 5 tiny distinct steps.
Just 5.
Yeah, keep it small. Then commit to focusing only on completing the first one. Don't even look at the other 4 until that first one is done.
Okay, tunnel vision on step 1.
Exactly. Once completed, take a moment to acknowledge it, celebrate that small victory before moving on. This incremental progress fuels your optimism and keeps you consistently on track.
And finally, what's the last strategy for cultivating this learned optimism? Number 5.
Last but certainly not least, surround yourself with positive influences.
Ah, the company you keep.
Absolutely crucial. Because while distractions are indeed contagious, so is positivity. Spending time with genuinely optimistic people or even consuming uplifting and constructive content can significantly boost your own focus and morale. This aligns beautifully with the concept of realistic optimism, which emphasizes grounding yourself in reality while actively seeking out and cultivating positive environments.
So it's about curating your social and informational diet then, like consciously choosing what you let in.
Exactly that. A strategic tip here is to regularly evaluate your environment. Are you primarily surrounded by individuals who drain your energy? Perhaps those who are constantly negative or unsupportive?
The energy vampires.
Right. Make conscious choices to engage more with those who inspire and motivate you, those who lift you up. And this also applies to your digital environment. It means actively avoiding endless doom scrolling on social media.
Kelsey.
We all are sometimes.
Yeah.
And instead, tuning into resources that genuinely encourage growth, provide solutions, and foster optimism. The people and information you expose yourself to profoundly shape your mindset.
That makes a lot of sense.
These 5 strategies truly highlight that optimism is not a passive emotion you just wait for. It requires deliberate cognitive and behavioral action to cultivate and sustain. Which brings us to a critical connection. If optimism is so actionable, what happens when it's combined with direct action in the world? It seems they're, well, inextricably linked.
This is where it gets really interesting, because our sources overwhelmingly emphasize that optimism, while incredibly powerful on its own, is simply not enough by itself.
Right, it needs something else.
It's a fundamental ingredient, yes, but it needs an active, indispensable partner.
Indeed. Victor Purton, who's a leading voice in this action and optimism movement, states it unequivocally. Optimism is the fundamental ingredient for positive change and must be accompanied by action.
Must be accompanied, not optional.
Exactly. And he's not alone in this conviction. Many of our contributors reinforce this idea. Dr. Shuri Higo, for instance, plainly puts it. Nothing gets done without underlying optimism, highlighting its foundational role. Professor Maggie Cusack concisely captures the dynamic, declaring, optimism mobilizes.
Mobilizes, I like that.
Yeah. And Sassoon Gregorian reinforces this active role, saying, optimism makes things happen. It's as simple as that. These perspectives all underscore that optimism isn't just about having a positive outlook. It's the profound fuel that ignites movement, persistence, and meaningful engagement with the world.
So it sounds like optimism isn't just about feeling good, but about fueling movement. It's the spark, and action is the engine that actually takes you somewhere.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
It energizes us, and critically, it brings people together. Robert Cox eloquently explains that optimism energizes him to act, which often gets me involved in new and diverse activities, which invariably turns me into we.
Turns me into we. That's powerful.
Isn't it? This infectious optimism is a powerful catalyst for collective action towards shared goals. When individuals are optimistic about a common vision, they are naturally more inclined to collaborate and work together effectively, creating this virtuous cycle where collective success further reinforces that initial optimism.
So it builds on itself within a group.
Absolutely. Tim Diamond from the Cotton On Foundation takes this even further, stating that optimism demands action and drives an ever-better mentality.
An ever better mentality.
Yeah. This isn't just a one-way street. Taking action to create positive change doesn't just utilize optimism, it can fuel further optimism. It creates a continuous cycle of progress and growth.
Right. Success breeds more optimism, which fuels more action.
Exactly. Optimism, therefore, isn't a static emotion, but an active, dynamic state. Tanya Abreu powerfully summarizes this by saying, optimism is less attitude and more action.
Less attitude, more action. Okay.
It's about believing with every cell of your body that positive results are always possible. Rosanna Aikano expands on this, asserting that optimism is not fully potentialized until it is combined with thoughtful, collective activism.
Collective activism. So working together.
Yes. And Caitlin Prendeville adds that action, particularly group action, is a manifestation of optimism, and, importantly, that action is the antidote to despair. This highlights optimism's role not just in enabling progress, but in actively combating stagnation and hopelessness.
So it's not blind faith. It's a grounded confidence that doesn't just push you past difficulties, but actively through them. It gives you the strength to push through.
Precisely. The Honorable Jonathan O'Dea states that true optimism creates confidence to push for change and confront inevitable difficulties in that journey. It's a reasonable expression of expectation and faith in a world that contains many signs of hope, indicating a grounded, realistic belief system, not a naive one.
Reasonable expression. I like that framing.
Yeah, and Kieran Flanagan offers a critical distinction that clarifies this further. What makes us optimistic is action. Hope is a great thing to sell, but it's a poor personal strategy, whereas optimism is earned through focus and is a far more reliable predictor of success.
Okay, that's a key difference. Hope versus earned optimism.
Yeah, it is key. Hope can be passive, just a wish. But optimism, the kind that yields results, is active and earned through deliberate engagement and effort. It's something you build.
That distinction really resonates. It highlights that optimism has real personal stakes and real-world impact. Can you give us a sense of that broader impact? Where else does this show up?
Well, this active, engaged optimism has profound personal and societal consequences. Dr. Margit Henderson explains that personal optimism empowers you to positively impact your life and the world and become willing to take action to improve your life. It's about self-efficacy translated into tangible efforts.
Taking control.
Right. Jack Berkemeyer and Debbie Silver illustrate how this plays out in leadership. Optimism is active. An optimistic leader isn't paralyzed by despair, nor does a leader sit still and think positive thoughts.
No navel-gazing.
Exactly. This leader learns everything possible about a situation, identifies options for response, makes a plan, and takes action. This paints a clear picture of how optimism manifests in practical, problem-solving behaviors.
Very pragmatic.
And even at a global scale, Eric Solheim, who is the executive director of the UN Environment Program, emphasizes that we need the optimism of our will to inspire bold action. This points to a collective, proactive approach to address widespread challenges.
That's a great point. It's not just about individual well-being. It's about broader community and even global impact, shaping the future. It scales up.
It absolutely scales up. Glenn Busnell-May, a leadership expert, suggests that one powerful answer to widespread pessimism is actually local, even private action.
Starting small.
Yeah. He argues that putting your hands and heart into meaningful social pursuits can give focus and a sense of purpose that enriches personal optimism and community capital. And this is robustly supported by studies showing how social pursuit and volunteering significantly support emotional health.
Makes sense. Doing good feels good.
It does. Avi Loran concisely states, contributing is optimism in action. Francesc Badia I Dalmases even views it as a duty, saying, our duty is to be optimistic as a way to shape a better future for all.
A duty. Wow.
Alice Bohr, an author, explains that optimism is also necessary for action. The act of seeking change and undertaking action is itself a fundamental act of optimism. Norrie Mosley agrees, defining optimism as taking action to make things better for things to work out in the end.
Action to make things better.
Hannah Ritchie, from Our World in Data, highlights the crucial need for the right kind of optimists. Those who recognize that the world will only improve if we fight for it. This isn't about blind faith. It's a fierce determination to make things better.
Fighting for it. Active.
Very active. Alan Lippis adds that optimists must speak out and be in action to address the worriers, fighting for solutions and making their vote count. And Daniel Smith beautifully summarizes the entire cycle. Positivity spurs action, action spurs achievement, and achievement is the enemy of waste.
Positivity, action, achievement, a clear chain.
Exactly. All these perspectives converge on the undeniable idea that optimism in its most effective form is a verb. It's something you do.
It's abundantly clear that optimism, in its most powerful and effective form, is a verb. It's something you do, a force that compels movement. So how does this active, action-oriented optimism truly manifest in how we lead others, especially in today's complex world? Where does leadership fit in?
This leads us directly to the concept of authentic leadership,
Okay.
which is a growing and incredibly vital field that emphasizes people, purpose, and ethics, often prioritizing these over pure profit.
Right, more than just the bottom line.
Exactly. Our sources directly link optimism to this leadership style, suggesting it's not merely a beneficial trait, but almost a prerequisite. Research indicates that leaders who possess positive psychological capital think of it as a rich reservoir of inner strengths, like hope, optimism, and resiliency,
Hope, optimism, resilience. Got it.
are significantly more likely to become authentic leaders.
Okay, so it's a foundation.
It seems to be. For example, optimistic leaders possess a greater ability to motivate their followers, inspiring them with confidence and a forward-looking perspective. They can even anticipate future events more effectively.
Interesting.
Resilient leaders, in turn, are far better equipped to function effectively in rapidly changing or challenging environments, providing crucial support and stability for those they lead.
Which is key right now.
Absolutely. And hopeful leaders excel at setting clear, inspiring goals, thereby creating a hopeful and purpose-driven environment for their teams. The interplay of these positive psychological states lays a strong foundation for authentic leadership to truly flourish.
Okay, so let's unpack this further. Authentic leadership sounds like more than just a buzzword. What does it actually mean? And what does it look like in practice for someone leading a team or an organization? How do you spot it?
That's a great question. While there's no single universally agreed upon definition, there's a strong consensus on its core qualities. An authentic leader is fundamentally true to themselves and their values.
True to themselves.
Yes, and that genuine authenticity, in turn, inspires profound trust and motivation in others. At the heart of it is self-awareness.
Knowing yourself.
Deeply understanding one's own strengths, weaknesses, motivations, impact on others. Closely related is the ability to trust in one's own values, thoughts, and feelings, using them as a reliable compass for decision-making, even when external pressures are high.
Having an inner compass.
Precisely. This self-trust is complemented by a continuous commitment to self-inquiry and self-realization, meaning they're always looking inward and striving to understand their evolving self. It's not static.
So it's a continuous journey of self-discovery, not a destination you just arrive at.
Exactly. Furthermore, authentic leaders don't shy away from scrutiny. They actively engage in reflection and seek feedback.
Okay, they're open.
Yes, embracing both supporting and opposing opinions to gain a balanced perspective on their decisions. When it comes to conflict, they practice non-manipulative conflict resolution, addressing disagreements in an unbiased, honest, ethical, and morally uplifting way. They don't resort to power plays or manipulation.
Takes integrity.
A lot of it. Ultimately, their leadership is fundamentally purpose-driven. Their prime focus is the success of the organization, but always strictly within the construct of social and ethical values.
Values first.
Yes, even when facing incredibly challenging situations where shortcuts might seem tempting. This contrasts sharply with traditional goal-oriented leadership, which might sacrifice values for targets. Authentic leadership prioritizes leading with purpose, emphasizing self-discipline, consistently upholding morals and personal values, and steadfastly avoiding those convenient shortcuts. It's truly about leading with the heart, manifesting not just in who they are, but in how they conduct themselves in a way that others perceive them as authentic. Consistency between values, beliefs, and actions is absolutely key. People see it.
That's a truly different kind of leadership. It sounds demanding but powerful. So what's the tangible impact of this style? How does it actually change the dynamic within a team or an organization? What are the results?
Well, initial research points to significant positive consequences, often mediated by trust and a powerful sense of collective efficacy within teams.
Collective efficacy, meaning the team believes it can succeed.
Exactly. So, for example, studies consistently show improved team performance. Teams led by authentic leaders generally perform demonstrably better.
Okay, better results?
Yes. And this is largely because authentic leadership also leads to increased team potency, which is that collective belief in the team's shared ability to succeed. When a team believes in itself, when they trust their leader and their shared purpose, they are far more likely to overcome obstacles and achieve their goals.
Confidence builds success.
Right. Furthermore, this style of leadership fosters higher trust and loyalty within the group or organization. When followers trust their leader, they become more loyal to the organization itself, which directly contributes to higher overall performance and a more positive work environment. So it's not just about feeling good, it's about creating tangible, measurable improvements through genuine human connection and ethical grounding.
It sounds like authentic leadership is an incredibly powerful model for success. But how does someone become an authentic leader? Is it something you can learn in a typical training program, or is it deeper than that? Is it nature or nurture?
This raises an important question, and our sources suggest it's indeed deeply rooted in personal history and life experiences, often referred to as trigger events.
Trigger events,
Yeah.
like defining moments.
Exactly. These are pivotal moments, maybe successes, failures, influential mentors, tough challenges that profoundly shape a leader's self-identity, their moral development, and their core values. Because authenticity in leadership stems from being true to one's own ideals and ethical values, it's seen as something brought about through a lifetime of experiences and reflection,
Okay.
rather than something easily acquired through traditional one-size-fits-all training programs. It's difficult to teach someone to be themselves in a generic workshop.
Right, you can't just tick a box for authenticity. So it's about drawing from personal history and building self-awareness from that.
Exactly. However, effective development methods are emerging. The Life Stories approach, for instance, involves guided self-reflection, helping individuals build self-awareness by examining their personal histories and these trigger events.
Connecting the dots in their own lives.
Precisely. The idea is that an authentic leader who is deeply aware of their core beliefs and the experiences that forge them is far less likely to stray from them under pressure. There's also emerging evidence that group coaching is an effective approach, as it provides a supportive environment for shared reflection and learning.
Learning from each other's experiences.
Yes, and also the intervention of developmental trigger events coupled with directed self-reflection seems effective. And crucially, the most expert authentic leaders aren't rigid. They possess an adaptability that allows them to integrate the needs of varying situations and diverse followers, all while remaining steadfastly true to their underlying value system. It's a dynamic balance of inner truth and outward responsiveness.
That makes sense. It's not static. This reminds me of the enormous challenges leaders face in today's world, which is often complex and, let's face it, can feel quite pessimistic sometimes. Our sources also address this head-on, highlighting just how critical authentic leadership is right now, especially when people are feeling overwhelmed or disconnected.
Absolutely. The How Leaders Can Navigate a World in Grievance article highlights data from the Edelman Trust Barometer 2025.
Oh yeah, the trust barometer. Always interesting.
It is, and it reveals a troubling trend: declining optimism globally and a pervasive shift from fear to polarization, culminating in a deep-seated sense of societal grievance.
Grievance. That's a strong word.
It is. And this grievance isn't nebulous or hard to define. The report identifies clear, powerful roots. One major factor is the mass-class divide, widening economic inequality, unaffordable homes, high grocery costs, the troubling disparity between CEO pay and regular incomes, all fueling a sense of unfairness.
So economic pain is a huge driver of this grievance. People feel the system isn't working for them. What else?
Then there's the pervasive lack of quality information.
Misinformation, disinformation.
Exactly. Fueled by the alarming rise of misinformation, the erosion of reliable news sources, increasingly biased media, and even a reliance on platforms like TikTok for news. It makes it incredibly hard for people to discern truth from falsehood.
Creating confusion and distrust.
Absolutely.
Oh.
We also see a widespread feeling of a broken political system, general disillusionment with political institutions and leaders who often seem incapable of addressing real issues, leading to continued polarization and uncertainty.
Yeah, a lot of frustration there.
And finally, there's a deeply concerning declining optimism for the future. A growing number of people believing their children won't be better off than they were, and young people even expressing worries about raising children in such an unpredictable and chaotic world.
That's really sobering.
It is. And in this challenging landscape, the Edelman report stresses that businesses and leaders have a critical role to play. They must take action to address mainstream dissatisfaction and actively work to rebuild confidence within their organizations and beyond. They can't just sit on the sidelines.
It sounds like an uphill battle, but the article seems to offer concrete steps. What specific actions can authentic leaders take in this environment to be that positive force, to counter the grievance?
Yeah, the article provides 5 incredibly practical action steps for leaders to be a positive force and genuinely bring light and hope to their teams and organizations. And these are perfectly aligned with the proactive and value-driven nature of optimism and authentic leadership we've been discussing.
Okay, what are they?
First, focus on your sphere of influence. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by global grievances, concentrate your energy on what you can directly control: your team, your organization, your immediate community, to make a tangible, positive impact.
Control what you can control. Makes sense.
Exactly. Channel energy effectively where it can make a difference. Second, build a high-trust culture. Trust is the absolute foundation of strong teams and resilient organizations.
Critical.
Absolutely. This means intentionally creating an environment where people feel heard, valued, and respected. Leaders can achieve this through transparency in their communications, demonstrating unwavering loyalty to their team members, and, critically, by listening more and truly understanding different perspectives. These actions go a long way in fostering genuine trust.
Trust is foundational, absolutely. What's the next step? Number 3.
Third, provide psychological safety.
Okay, explain that one a bit more.
It means people need to feel safe to voice their opinions, to ask questions, and even to make mistakes without fear of retribution or negative consequences.
So they can speak up without fear.
Precisely. A culture of psychological safety actively encourages innovation, promotes open collaboration, and builds resilience within the team, allowing them to adapt and learn from challenges rather than hiding them.
Okay. Number 4.
Fourth, focus on organizational culture. A positive, thriving culture doesn't happen by accident. It must be intentionally shaped and nurtured by leaders. They need to cultivate a workplace that actively supports inclusivity, adaptability, and a shared sense of purpose.
Being intentional about the environment.
Yes. When employees feel deeply connected to a meaningful mission and a supportive environment, their engagement and morale will significantly improve, which then feeds back into the organization's success.
And what's the final piece of this puzzle for leaders? Number 5.
And finally, train your leaders. This might sound obvious, but it's often overlooked. You need to equip your team, especially those in leadership positions, with the essential skills required to navigate today's complexities.
Give them the tools.
Right. This includes investing in leadership development programs, providing effective communication training, and offering practical tools for managing constant change and inherent uncertainty. These steps are all about being proactive and strategic, rather than simply reacting to or getting caught in the negativity. It's about embodying the light you want to see in the world, as the source puts it, and inspiring that same light in action in others.
It's about being proactive and strategic, rather than simply getting caught in the negativity. This brings us to another fascinating layer of this deep dive, the very foundation of how we understand knowledge and positivity itself. We've been talking about evidence-based strategies and scientific research, but what makes something evidence-based in the human sciences? To truly grasp why we trust these insights, we need to quickly look at the very foundation of how we approach knowledge itself. Where did that emphasis on data and objective understanding come from?
Right. To really understand why we call these strategies for optimism and leadership evidence-based, we need to look at a philosophical approach that profoundly shaped how we seek and validate knowledge in fields like psychology and sociology. Positivism.
Positivism, okay.
In its essence, positivism is a philosophical approach, asserting that authentic knowledge is derived solely from sensory experience, preferably through rigorous scientific methods.
Sensory experience, things you can see, hear, touch, measure.
Exactly. It champions observable and measurable phenomena, and fundamentally rejects abstract theorization or metaphysical speculation as valid sources of knowledge in a scientific context. If you can't observe or measure it, it's outside the realm of science, according to strict positivism.
So it's essentially the idea that if you can't measure it or observe it directly, it's not truly scientific knowledge.
That's the core of it, yes. This idea truly gained traction in the early 19th century, notably influenced by Auguste Comte, often hailed as the father of sociology. He proposed that society, much like the physical world, operates according to discoverable scientific laws. He envisioned human societies progressing through stages, ultimately reaching a positive or a scientific stage where knowledge would be firmly rooted in empirical scientific methods.
A scientific stage for society.
Yes. His famous motto succinctly captured this vision. From science comes prediction. From prediction comes action. This wasn't just about understanding the world, but about gaining knowledge to actively improve it.
Science prediction or action. Makes sense.
So the basic tenets of positivism essentially say, first, scientific methods like hypothesis testing and building theories from data can be directly applied to studying human social life.
Okay.
Second, knowledge is generated exclusively through observation. This is the principle of empiricism. If you can't observe it, it's not scientific knowledge.
Observation is key.
Right. And third, facts and values are distinct, which means you can have objective inquiry, even when studying people. This approach strongly championed finding universal laws of human behavior, much like physics finds laws for the natural world.
So this is why modern psychology and sociology strive to be so scientific, relying heavily on data, experiments, and measurable outcomes, right? It's the drive for that objective universal understanding, trying to be like the natural sciences.
Exactly. Positivism played a pivotal role in solidifying psychology's reputation as a rigorous science, consciously moving it from purely philosophical speculation to empirical research. This influence is evident in several key areas. There's a strong emphasis on quantitative methods and statistical analysis.
Lots of numbers.
Yes. Think about how we use tools like IQ tests or personality assessments like the Big Five to quantify complex human attributes into numerical scores.
Right.
It also fostered a systematic approach to research, advocating for replicable experiments and observation-based evidence to ensure findings were consistent and reliable, not just subjective interpretations.
Making it repeatable.
Yes. This led to significant advancement in standardized methodologies, from structured interviews to psychometric tests, allowing for consistent measurement of psychological constructs across different populations. And ultimately, positivism facilitated the formulation of evidence-based theories, grounding psychological theories in observable phenomena, much like Pavlov's classical conditioning, rather than abstract ideas. This rigorous approach truly elevated psychology's standing as a science.
But I imagine such a strict approach would face some pushback, especially when dealing with something as complex and inherently subjective as human experience. It seems like it would miss a lot of the nuances. You can't put love or grief on a scale in the same way you measure temperature, can you?
That's a sharp observation. This raises an important question, and you're absolutely right, it certainly did face pushback. And these critiques actually led to significant advancements and reformulations in how we approach knowledge, especially in the social sciences.
Okay, so what were the main criticisms?
Well, one primary criticism was reductionism. Positivism was accused of oversimplifying complex human experiences, like love, grief, or creativity, by attempting to reduce them solely to measurable components. It often neglected their nonlinear, unpredictable nature.
Making people into just numbers.
Kind of, yeah. This leads directly to the problem of quantification, where profound qualitative experiences are incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to capture fully through scales and questionnaires. They miss the richness and nuances.
So by focusing only on what's measurable, it risks losing the deeper human story, the why behind the what.
Precisely. Critiques also pointed to ignoring subjective accounts. By leaning so heavily on empirical data, positivism often sidelined personal narratives, lived experiences, and individual interpretations, which are absolutely crucial for understanding human behavior in its entirety.
People's own stories matter.
Immensely. Furthermore, a major weakness was treating the natural and social worlds alike. Critics argued that positivism failed to account for fundamental differences. Social structures aren't independent entities like rocks or planets. They're shaped by and dependent on human agents who create and reflect upon them.
So they change based on what people think and do.
Exactly. They change significantly over time and location. The human world is dynamic and interpretive in a way that the physical world isn't.
Okay. What else?
Then there's the bold claim of certainty, which critics called almost a fantasy. Even within the natural sciences, by the mid-20th century, physicists understood that simply observing subatomic particles could alter them, raising fundamental questions about achieving utterly objective knowledge.
The observer effect.
Right. And finally, there's a concept of theory-laden observation. Think of it this way. What you already believe or expect, your existing concepts and theories, can actually shape what you see or how you interpret a situation. Your past experiences aren't just background. They're the lens through which you view everything.
So our biases affect what we observe.
Essentially, yes. This means observations are never entirely neutral or purely objective.
So the idea of pure, unbiased observation is perhaps a bit of a fantasy, or at least far more complicated than initially thought. It's like our brains are constantly filtering and interpreting, not just passively receiving data.
Exactly. And that's where critical rationalism and postpositivism come in. They acknowledge these complexities and attempt to refine, rather than outright reject, the scientific pursuit of knowledge. Karl Popper, for instance, introduced his falsifiability principle.
Falsifiability, trying to prove things wrong.
Kind of. He argued against the idea that theories are proven just by confirming evidence piling up. Instead, he proposed that a scientific theory is strong, not because it can be verified, but because it can be falsified or disproven through testing. Science, for Popper, progresses by actively trying to eliminate false theories, rather than attempting to prove true ones definitively. It's a constant process of refinement and getting less wrong over time.
That's a fundamental shift in how we think about scientific progress. It's about chipping away at falsehoods. And how did that lead to post-positivism?
Well, this evolved into post-positivism, sometimes called post-empiricism. It's not a rejection, but a significant reformation of positivism. It accepts that an objective reality likely exists.
Okay, so reality is still out there.
Yes, but crucially, it acknowledges that our understanding of it is inherently fallible and theory-laden. Post-positivism explicitly recognizes that the researcher's theories, hypotheses, background knowledge, and even values can and often do influence observations, even when striving for objectivity.
Accepting the human element in science.
Exactly. This led to approaches like critical realism, which proposes an objective reality exists, but our knowledge of it is mediated and continually refined. It also fosters the acceptance of qualitative methods alongside quantitative ones as valid for knowledge acquisition.
So, numbers and stories.
Yes, seeking a more holistic understanding that combines the measurable with the nuanced human experience, getting the best of both worlds.
That makes sense.
This philosophical evolution also gave rise to significant alternatives to positivism in psychology, or perhaps approaches that gain more traction alongside it. The phenomenological approach, for example, focuses on understanding the essence of lived experiences from the individual's subjective perspective, valuing unique perceptions over generalizable laws.
What it's like to be that person.
Right. The psychoanalytic approach, spearheaded by Freud, delves into the unconscious mind and hidden motives, emphasizing interpretation over strict empirical measurement. And the humanistic approach, with figures like Carl Rogers, emphasizes individual potential, self-actualization, and an inherently good human nature, prioritizing subjective experiences and free will.
So many different lenses to view human experience.
Exactly. These alternatives highlight how psychology benefits immensely from a balanced integration of both quantitative and qualitative research methods, allowing for both broad generalizations and deep, nuanced understandings of human behavior.
So what started as a drive for purely objective scientific knowledge has evolved into a much more nuanced understanding. It still values empirical evidence, which is important, but it now fully recognizes the immense complexities of human experience and the crucial role of interpretation. It's a much richer tapestry now, isn't it? More complete.
It truly is. And this journey in how we understand knowledge itself actually reinforces the very real evidence-based aspects of cultivating optimism and taking action that we've been discussing. It shows that while we strive for scientific rigor in understanding human behavior, we also fully acknowledge the inherent human element, the subjectivity, and the personal values that authentic leadership so powerfully embodies. It's about finding truth through multiple lenses, not just one, to get a truly complete picture.
What an incredible deep dive. We've journeyed from the personal strategies for unlocking optimism like practicing gratitude and actively reframing negative thoughts, through its vital, indispensable partnership with action, to its powerful manifestation in authentic leadership. And we even explored the very philosophical underpinnings of how we understand these concepts scientifically, tracing the evolution from strict positivism to a more nuanced, comprehensive view of knowledge.
Yeah, we've truly seen how optimism isn't just a passive hope that things might get better, but an active belief that mobilizes us and gives us the strength to confront challenges head on. It's really compelling to see how cultivating this mindset through practices like gratitude and reframing directly fuels our capacity for meaningful action.
Absolutely.
The sources make it undeniably clear that optimism is the essential ingredient, but action is the indispensable partner that brings about positive, tangible change in the world. One without the other just doesn't work as well.
And how that action, in turn, reinforces optimism, creating that powerful virtuous cycle we talked about. For leaders, this means going beyond just focusing on numbers and metrics. It's about intentionally cultivating an environment of deep trust, psychological safety, and a shared purpose that directly influences their team's ability to thrive and innovate, even in a world, as we discussed, that can feel riddled with grievance and uncertainty.
Yeah,
It's truly about being the light you want to see in the world, as one source so powerfully put it.
I like that phrase. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the philosophical debate around positivism reminds us that even our understanding of facts and truth evolves and becomes more sophisticated over time. Yet the core human drive to systematically understand and continuously improve our world remains constant.
We keep trying to figure things out.
We do. And the most impactful changes, whether they're deeply personal or broadly societal, consistently stem from a powerful blend of empirical insight and human intention. It's about believing in what's genuinely possible and then actively, persistently making it so. It's a dynamic interplay between our minds, our will, and the world around us.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? The next time you feel overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information or by the daunting challenges around you, maybe consider this. How might your cultivated optimism combined with intentional, focused action become a powerful force for change, not just for yourself, but for those in your immediate sphere of influence and perhaps even further?